8. Org lowered the laser rifle to waist height and stared at the figure in front of him. He couldn't tell if the thing were a bird or a something else. Certainly the feet looked like a bird's. It was the body that made him stare. The ovoid body was slung between extremely long legs in such a way that its horizontal axis was the long one. The eyes were the most fascinating part of the alien. The creature had elongated eye slits that extended from the side of the skull to the front, almost joining over the short beak that extended from below the face. The eyes had double pupils, one facing directly out and away from the skull, and the other facing generally forward. The ears, or what should have been ears, had been reduced to mere vestigial openings on the top of the skull behind and above the eyes. The rearward bending knees were admirably adapted to movement within the swamp, Hork noted, allowing the alien to place each foot carefully into the uneven or treacherous soft ground. The long lower leg above the claw had broad webbed phalanges that now stood out wide as though in surprise. The lower claws showed the same minor webbing as well. An interesting beast. Horg was not the most articulate member of either his section or the desk team in general, which perhaps made him the best person to make initial contact. There was nothing wrong with his mind. It was just that he was careful about what he said and how he said it. Still holding the laser rifle with his right hand, he gestured toward himself with his left thumb. "Swollen Horg," he said in a firm, commanding voice. He also said it with the sure and certain knowledge that the alien would understand. Everyone knew that if you spoke to someone who didn't understand your language, you should speak slowly and loudly and wave your arms. No one was so stupid that they couldn't understand that. "Swollen Horg," he said, a little more loudly and with a more violent hand gesture. The alien continued to huddle against the foliage, but he became more relaxed. "Dakota, am I?" The alien waved his hand with the same gesture Hork had used. Swollen Horg's plan for dealing with the alien had not been based on being able to speak to it in any mutually understandable language. Now that he was confronted with one alien who seemed actually able to speak, Horg had no idea what to say next. There were so many possibilities. He didn't know where to begin. He had a whole history of who he was and where he came from and what he was doing here, and he stood open-mouthed. The muzzle of the rifle slowly dropped toward the ground. "Name my Godo is I Tatate am." The voice was high and chirping with strength on the hard sounds, the sibilant sounds almost lost. Dakota watched the blank expression on the face of the human with the rifle. He concentrated on what he was trying to say. "My name Dakota," he said slowly. "I am Tatate." Dakota had to think hard before he spoke. The sentence structure he used was fine when dealing with his own kind, but a straight transliteration, a word-for-word substitution, did not work for humans. Dakota stared at Horg, the skin between his double eyes wrinkling with the effort of thought. "You fell from sky like the others?" he said, half question, half statement. "We came from Selford," said Horg, still confused about what to say or ask. "I think we had an accident. Rosa Takuda says we are here forever." It was the only thing Horg could think of. "I want to go home." That came out almost as an afterthought. Horg was surprised that he had said it at all. A wave of loneliness swept over him. His eyes blurred momentarily. Ever since he'd been recruited into the Special Forces, Horg had considered the Dest his home, the members of his family. Now, suddenly, the thought of what he had left behind, the people and places he knew, it suddenly hit him. with full force that he would never, ever see any of them again. He knew some people would think of him occasionally, but the memories would eventually fade and he would cease to exist. There was an old legend that you existed as long as someone remembered your name. That was immortality. That was why there were graveyards with the names of people written in stone above their last resting place. But Horg, and all the others on the jump ship, would have no resting place. They had vanished into the vastness of space. They would be listed as missing and overdue on some log, and then their names would be filed in a vast computer memory and forgotten. It did not occur to Horg that perhaps the computer memory assured immortality.
Horg, this is Knight. Report.
The tiny speaker set against the left mastoid in Horg's combat helmet snapped the soldier back to reality. His eyes cleared.
Horg here. I have made contact with the person we are looking for.
Horg didn't know what else to say.
He can talk,
Was the only other comment he could think of.
On the way,
came the reply from the team leader. Dakota had been chattering away all this time, but Horg had not been listening. Now he became aware of the strange chirping sounds from the Tatate. It was hard to understand what he was saying, and he concentrated on the noise. Slowly the words began to come through. The Tatate was saying something about where he lived and what he did. It would all have to be repeated when Knight and Holland arrived. When they did, the four of them squatted in a circle. Each member of the patrol questioned the Tatate in his own way. Horg lapsed more and more into silence, quietly, methodically processing the information they were getting. Knight questioned Dakota in an orderly manner, examining each statement as it was given, using each as a lead to the next question. Holland just blurted out any question that came to mind. She was so full of inquiry the words seemed to fairly bubble out of her. Knight would let her go on for a while and then get back on the track of what he wanted to know. As they questioned the alien, they became aware of other movement in the gloom of the forest. That there were others out there watching their movements and actions was obvious. Dakota showed that he knew it too. At first the humans were on guard, but as the questioning continued, they began to feel safer. They were aware of the unseen presence, but it seemed more inquisitive than hostile. And they could hear, occasionally, a soft chirping. Even before Dakota started to tell his story, Knight had decided that they would have to take the alien back to the camp, but he wasn't sure how they would do it. Here was a link with the planet beyond the small circle they had explored on their own. This odd, bird-like creature could be the path to their own future. Knight wondered, just in passing, if the two species would be able to interbreed. Impossible, he thought, the idea vanishing as quickly as it had come. The alien answered all their questions. It was an interesting, if incomplete, story. Dakota was an elder in a small tribe of Tatate who occupied this section of the forest. There were other tribes in the area, but they were separated by some significant distance. Knight tried to understand how far, and he questioned Dakota on the subject, but the Tatate could not answer the questions. Like many humans, Knight thought of distance in terms of linear measurement. Dakota thought of it in terms of how long it took to get from one place to another. The tribes were 4 to 6 days apart, but how far that was did not matter. What was important to Dakota was that he had to carry or find food for 4 days if he were to make the journey for another tribe. What was the importance of linear distance? The real question was how Dakota had come to speak their language. As Knight listened, he began to hear word patterns and vocabulary that were archaic. The language the alien spoke had been learned, he said, from the others who had dropped from the sky.
The others? What others?
Asked Knight. The 3 patrol members leaned forward, almost threatening the Tatate. Knight was tempted to put the laser rifle to his head, forcing the creature to give the right answers. He didn't care that there were others in the forest. All his thoughts were concentrated on this one question. What others? Long ago, said Dakota slowly, concentrating on the words so that these humans could understand. They came from the sky, dropped like you. This was long before my other came to the tribe. They in this valley fell, and there was great thunder. They came, they say, from the home in the new star that appeared in the sky then. That is what we of them say. They were not good for the Tatate, and many died. That is why we were afraid. Many of the tribe said we should not meet you, but there were others who said yes. Perhaps you would for us be better. Dakota looked at the three human faces staring at him, searching each one for a clue to the future. There were other humans, he knew, back at the place where the star had landed. They would have to be consulted as well. Those who fell were very weak at first, and the Tatate who live in the flatter lands without great trees tried to help them. They who fell took the help, and then they heard the Tatate. They who fell had guns, great sticks that could reach out and kill. The Tatate ran away from them. Later we were able to trade with them. Mostly it was food and the knowledge of what they could eat from the land and river and forest. We gave them the belts we wove, and they were happy. But now they force some of those from the lands without the great trees to work for them and to do as they are told. There is great sorrow among the Tatate, but what can we do? They are so strong, and the Tatate are so weak. Soon they will drive us into the mountains, and we will not be here ever again. They so strong are. They were the people of the dragon. Holland sat back on her heels in surprise. Like this? She asked, reaching under her battle tunic and presenting the emblem of the Draconis Combine. Dakota took the emblem with his slender fingers. He turned it over in his palm and studied it carefully. Yes, he said finally, just like this.